Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, and I am really excited to bring you this song today because this is another one that came from my early days with the band. And after having discovered that's the way that it is, I remember this was another song that came from that time. At general time frame, I mean, different album, but that, early 80s time where MTV was a really cool thing and there were all kinds of video. And I really liked this song right off the bat. I mean, from the first time I heard it, I thought this is just a great song. And I'm going to play it for you today. This is called Stay on Top. It is credited to a T. Jackson. Now, the official Uriah Heep website says probably a cover version, no info on the original recording. So, I had a minute. I thought I'd start doing some digging because now, of course, the archives of what we can find on the internet seem to be growing at an exponential rate. So I thought maybe I'll find something. So I did some digging, and what I came up with was nothing. Nothing. I can't find any recordings of this song by a T. Jackson, not just as the recording artist, but as just a writing credit before 1983 when Uriah Heep released it on the Head First album. So I thought, okay, well, maybe he wrote it for them, or maybe it was a song he wrote that never got recorded. Somehow they got a hold of it. So I really don't know how it came to be. I did find there was one other version that was by a band. I can't remember what their name was, though. And it was recorded in 1997, also credited to T. Jackson, called Stay on Top. So they may have done a cover of the song that they knew by Uriah Heep, or it may have fallen into their hands some other way. But that was all I was able to find. So not really sure how it all came together, but the fact is it came together, and I am so glad that it did because it's such a great song. Let's just get into it right now. Here is Stay on Top. I'm really loving these keyboard intros that we're getting through John Sinclair's era here. There's some really innovative synthesizer work going on. I'm not sure if that's exactly a Shepard tone or not, but for those of you who don't know what a Shepard tone is, basically it's a continual sound that sounds like you're going up in pitch, but you're really not ever going anywhere, but you feel like you're still rising. It's a very weird and unique sound, and it's basically created by several lined up short bursts of increase that fire in an order that just makes it sound like it's continually going up. But after a few seconds, you're like, how come we're not at the top of the keyboard yet? Because this has been rising for a while. It's just the magic of it. It's all done in layers. It's a really cool and very unique thing. Check it out. There's some really interesting tutorials on how it works on YouTube. So if you're interested in Shepard tones because you learned something today from my little show, then go and check that out. It's really cool and innovative stuff. I don't know the history of it all, but once I saw how it worked, I thought that is just plain genius. Whoever came up with that, probably someone named Shepard. Very, very cool. Very cool. But I love these really interesting and innovative synthesizer intros that we're getting to some of these songs. And then obviously it just kicks right back to, yes, this is a cool intro, but this is still a rock band. If anyone listening to the show or anyone out there in the world or anyone ever questioned whether Bob Daisley was a good bass player or not, just listen to that. I don't know if he wrote that part or, if somebody else came up with it and said, hey, man, you should play this. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that is some brilliant playing. Very tasteful, a lot of technique in there. Not something that you would necessarily even come up with for a song like this. I mean, you could just play very straightforward quarter notes on the bass, half notes on the bass even, just play the pocket, but there's some really, really interesting stuff going on. I absolutely love it. And those, a lot of times, again, guys, these are the things that can make the difference in whether a song just grips you or not. You know, if he played just straight on it, then you might go, yeah, you know what? This is pretty cool. I can nod my head to it. I can bounce. I can, tap my foot, whatever it is. But this is just that, but full of color and flavor, and just makes the whole thing much more interesting. Yeah, this is really good. I mean, I love the way that the bass carries on through the verse, really drives the song. You've got that in the drums going, and it's really powerful. I love the kick drums on the song. They're really in there. They're thumping the chest. They're powerful. And I like that. You really need that for a song like this, especially if the bass is not going to play along with you and thicken up that bass drum sound. You've got to really push it through. You've got to have that air hitting that front head and really making that sound pop, because the bass is not giving you that extra strength. It's playing something completely different. It's almost replacing what the lead guitar might be doing. But it's just very, very nice technique on this. And it supports the vocal, though. Even though he's busy, he's kind of like letting the vocal do his thing. I'll come in and fill in between, and we'll blend over each other a little bit, but it's all going to work out. Then you get to the chorus, and this is really interesting now because everything drops out except for the vocals and drums. So just all that bass presence in the verse suddenly disappearing really makes that feel light. But then you have these different vocals that come in and kind of fill it up. Thankfully, the drums are big and strong in this song. Otherwise, I don't think this would work quite as well, because you just don't have enough thickness. You don't have enough bottom end happening. But I think it actually sounds good. It puts you off a little bit at first, because all of a sudden, this bass thing that you've been paying attention to, whether directly or indirectly, is just gone. And there's no low end in the song except for the bass drum. So it feels like a weird transition, but it really works well. And then the vocals coming in and filling in different things where the instruments might normally be, and then a little bit of guitar coming in. It's actually a really interesting way to write and perform a song, but I think it really works well. Yeah, I like that. Some really nice fill-ins from the guitar there, some really good effects, some great panning too. That really makes that feel three-dimensional, what the guitars are doing, because you're not just hearing it in the center or one ear or towards the other ear. It's actually moving around in the sound field, and I really like that for this. I think that really makes it come alive. And we have the return of the brassy synth. That seems to be John Sinclair's kind of go-to for a lot of stuff. And again, very popular instrument at the time in the early 80s. A lot of the British new wave bands were using that, whether as a front instrument or in layers. So it was kind of a sign of the times. For Ken, it was the B3, and a fantastic B3 at that. And, for John, it's that big brassy sound, and it works very well, but it stands out. It really does cut through the sound. So me as an engineer, I would probably put it a little bit lower in volume and just let it blend. But that wasn't the choice here. They're really letting it cut through. And it's not so much that it's intrusive on everything else, but it's definitely draws your attention when you first hear it, when it's first introduced into the song. Now, I'm going to rewind it just a little bit and really kind of feel that difference between the verse and the chorus with that lack of bass guitar. loving those guitar effects that we're hearing there. Really just adding so much back that, again, we're losing with that bass disappearing. But that's really cool. And then a nice little delay effect on the vocals in one spot. Unexpected, which I really liked. Very tasteful, done perfectly. I mean, there was nothing off about it at all. It was very flawless. And, this song is moving along at a pretty good pace, but I have to say, it's simple as it seems on the surface. It's a very innovative piece of music. Now, I know what you're thinking. We were just about to get an amazing fill by Lee Kerslake, and you're right. And you know what? I'm going to go back and rewind it, so we'll get to hear it. Don't worry. Now, one thing I'll say about Lee is, I love Lee's playing. I love his writing as a drummer. I love his performances as a drummer. But one thing that I haven't really talked about is that he's very good at transitional fills. And what I mean by that is you can have a fill that's, say, halfway through a verse that breaks up the first and second half of a verse, or maybe one at the end of every line that kind of just segments each one of those parts, or even in a chorus, halfway through the chorus, or you do one as you're transitioning from a beginning part of a chorus to a middle part, or whatever. A transitioning fill is really more when you're changing parts completely. So when you're coming out of a chorus into a guitar solo, or coming out of a verse going into a chorus, his fills sometimes they're so intricate and so phenomenal. I really love that kind of playing. I mean, he's great at a groove. He's great at playing a shuffle. He's great at playing straightforward. But I think he really shines a lot of times on those transitional fills. And, I don't think I've mentioned that on the show before. All these episodes in, I don't think I have. So if I have, well, there it is again. And if I haven't, now you've heard it. And it may seem like in the chorus it was a little bit repetitive too, but I don't think it was this time, because what they're doing in the background is so interesting that I just want to keep hearing more and more of it. I mean, there's some nice keyboard work going. There's some great bass work going. There's just so much to pay attention to that I'm kind of glad they kept that bridge going as long as they did, because I feel like I would have missed something had they not. This gives me enough chance to focus on each of the different instruments while I'm hearing what the vocals are doing and really experience the entire section. Pandemonium, I tell you, but controlled pandemonium nonetheless. I really like that. I mean, first of all, it's just a great blistering solo for Mick. I don't think there has been a solo I've heard Mick do up to this point that I haven't liked. And it's not for any other reason than I think that they're actually good. I really enjoy the way he plays. I like the sound he gets. I like his choices. I think that his solos are really they're good in feeling, and they work well with the song. And, I've talked a lot about how he controls what he does within the context of the song, regardless of the speed he's playing at. He keeps it within the song. It's all relatable. And I think that to me is what I love about his playing so much. And he's very creative too. But I find it fascinating what the backing band is doing during this time. I mean, they're slowing down a little. They're stopping at a point. It's not something that you would expect for a backing band to play during what I would call an aggressive solo. I don't mean aggressive in the way of anger, but it's very, there's a lot going on. He's playing with passion. Maybe passion is a better word to describe it. But for the background music to be doing what it's doing is really interesting against a solo, because normally you would just want to keep the song moving, keep that train rolling while the guitarist is in his shining moment. So I find that whole part fascinating, and then coming out to that, weird synthesizer part. But again, we heard another wonderful transitional fill from Lee Kerslake, which just validates the point that I made earlier. But these sections put together are just magic to me. I've really gone back and forth over the years on whether I thought Lee Kerslake was playing double bass during this part when, right when they go stay on top, right there, because it sounded in some headphones, it sounded like there's a triplet going into that snare hit, but I really don't think it is. Listening in the studio now, which this is the first time I've done it. And again, I'm listening to a remastered version, so there's a little bit different clarity, but the bass drum is so much softer right there. I think he's just doing a double hit on one pedal going into that strike. So that's what I'm going to go with, because I'm hearing it so much better now than I have in the past. I think it would have been cool as a double bass part, ba, 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 ba. That might have been cool. But I think this works, the way it is. Obviously, it was recorded, it was a hit, so I can't really argue the success of it. But the bass drums are a little quieter going into that power strike, just because it's being played on one pedal. Even if he just did two hits on two different bass drums or a double bass drum pedal, it would have been more powerful, because he's not trying to smack that mallet against the head twice really quick. It would be two different ones that would have much more power and control. So it would have brought a little more punch to the song, but I think this works just fine the way it is. It's a kind of sudden, abrupt ending, and you probably in most cases wouldn't end on an up note like that. If you look at, like classical music theory, for example, you have to end on the same note you started on and all that crap. I think that was really kind of thrown out the window with rock and roll, and as well as it should be. A song should start on the note it starts on and end on the note it needs to end on. I get that whole full circle, justifying it in your head, not feeling unsettled because you've completed the circuit, or however you want to say it. I get that. But at the same point, if a song needs to start on an A and it needs to end on a C, then that's what it should do, period. I've always felt that way. I agree with a lot of things I know about theory, but that's just not one of them. I think for back in the day, that was fine when Mozart was around, when Beethoven was around, but nowadays music just needs to be what the intent of the composer is. And that's just how I feel about that. But it is an abrupt ending. It's unexpected to end on that note. You wouldn't say they're probably going to do this. You would think they're probably going to end, where they started, but they don't. And I actually like that. I like when movies don't have the expected ending. I like when songs change things up a little bit. It just makes it more interesting to me. If everything's predictable, what's the point? And even though they're playing a lot more straightforward than they were in earlier albums, and this is one of those points where fans are like, well, I like this era, but I don't like that era. It was too poppy. It was too commercial, or whatever you want to say. That's fine if you don't like that sound. But I still say, even through all of that, they're still finding interesting things to do in their songs. They're throwing in little effects. They're doing these little guitar parts that just, move across from one ear to another. Different things that keep the song interesting that you wouldn't expect. And to be quite honest, a lot of bands in this era were really just doing what was programmed. They would say, okay, here's our verse, here's our chorus. We'll repeat those, and literally would just repeat them. Sometimes you would get a little bit of extra flair. Thinking of the song Riding on the Metro by Berlin, which I love that song. I got to see them live a few years ago at Lost 80s Live, and it was such an amazing thing to watch them play. But I digress. in that song, in the last verse going into the chorus, everything is just so programmed perfectly on the beat. Not a lot of variety, but there's this one lyric that just comes in where in the background, she just says, sorry. And it really just changes the whole feel of that song, those little nuances. And Heep is full of those. If you're really listening, really paying attention, sometimes they're panned far out to the side, so they're kind of barely perceptible. Sometimes they're a little bit more in the background, but they're there. And if you hear them, if you feel them, it really helps bring out a difference in the song. And that's why I love those little things that they're doing right now. So people could say they were poppy or commercial at this point, but I still say that they're throwing in a lot of things that are very unique to the flavors of Uriah Heep. And that's just how I feel about it. But I feel about this song that it is, a great song. Yeah, I've always loved it. You could say that there's part of it that's probably nostalgia, because it brings me back to, a great time in my life, the early 80s, considering I was born in 72. There was just a lot of discovery, a lot of having fun, a lot of learning going on in this part of my life. And music was such a huge part of that, there's probably a segment of that feeling I have that's nostalgia. But at the same point, I just love this song. It's a very well constructed, very well performed, really creative song, goes into some unexpected changes, some really great keyboard sounds, really good guitar effects, just so many layers of things in this song that I think are fantastic. But for me, this one really comes down to Bob Daisley's bass line. I think it's just magic. And great song. So thank you guys for joining me for another episode. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!